Welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future, Change the Conversation, an unedited, honest conversation to create the future. I'm Arjan Visser, futurist and your host, and join me as I chat with my friend Kurt Von Ahnen about authentic leadership transformation. Kurt is an organizational development consultant, a teacher, a public speaker about turning your leadership into action. Kurt, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Arjan. Thanks, man. It's good to be back.
It is really good to be back, and we have audio. We have survived our issues, and
Yeah. It's you can see me, you can hear me, so and that's good. And we got a great deal of distance between us, man. They're halfway around the world from me. This is cool.
yeah, it's always fun, isn't it? Without nearly any delay nowadays. So.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid talking long distance. There'd be gaps trying to talk to grandma. But it's a new age.
It is, yeah. So, welcome to the podcast. We talk about authentic leadership transformation, which for me centers around the big question that I put back into common language we all know. Start with who. Who am I becoming? Who am I? With who am I traveling into that future that's emerging to me? And not at least, who am I called to be and make a difference for? So around this subject, you already shared me a story up front, which I thought, sometimes we talk about in a podcast and not enough, but that's the outflow of authentic leadership or the overflow. Like, how do you cultivate an environment like a garden where people are free to flourish in the season they're at? And you gave a great story that actually I want to use that as an analogy in the podcast.
Yeah, it's we had talked before the show, and I know we were thinking, oh well, maybe we'll talk about this or maybe we'll talk about that, and then this thing happened over the weekend. I volunteer as a coach with this mountain bike team that's local for kids, 6th grade through 12th grade. And usually working with our group, I'm teamed up with group 1. So group 1 is the advanced riders, group 2 is the intermediate, and group 3 is the beginners. And usually I'm teamed up with the group 1 riders, and we go and we do, and it's me and another coach, and we do some things. So this weekend, we got together with 2 other teams about an hour and a half away from where I live on a new trail we'd never been on. So we had about 40 kids with us, which was really cool. And we split them up into different groups and then assigned different coaches to the groups. And I got assigned to a beginners group, and there was 12 people in the group. And just to explain to people that don't understand how this works, a group ride, especially in a trail, is going to have a leader and what they call a sweep, the person that's last. And so I was designated the sweep. And so as a sweep, you just make sure everyone in your group survives a lap, right? Like you're responsible to make sure everybody gets through. And I don't know, Arjan, if you signed up as a coach for a mountain bike team, wouldn't you assume that everybody knows how to ride the bike?
Yes, I do. But I remember when my kids they turned into 6, I think 6, they turned 6. They had their first kids party. Our twins, and they said, "Dad, let's do a mountain bike ride." And I assumed everyone, because they were 3 and I was done running behind my kid. So I thought, I'll invent something that, and I saw something in Germany with walking bikes. So they were not even 3 when they could ride a bike.
Yeah.
But then the surprise was half the kids, we put their parents in a tough spot because they had to learn their kids how to ride a bike before that birthday. So I'm not making assumptions.
Well, there's 12 people in the group, and the person that's like 4th or 5th in line, before we get into the trail, into the woods, she pulls off to the side and she waves everybody by. And she's a 16-year-old girl. She's got these big glasses on. And then I pull up because I'm the last. So I pull up. I'm like, what are we doing here? And she goes, oh, I just wanted to let everybody else go. I'm not that fast. And I said, okay. So she starts into the trail. Arjan, immediately, she like swerves and she turns right off the trail. I said, oh, well, okay. And so I said, are you okay? She says, yeah. She didn't fall down or anything. She just rode off the trail. So she gets off the bike. She pulls the bike over. into the middle of the trail. She bends over and she winds the pedals a couple of times, and she sets the pedals exactly where she wants them. And which I had no idea was going to be a ritual, but this became a ritual for the afternoon. And then she got back on the bike and she rode about 10 or 15 yards and rode off the other side of the trail. Right. So she went a couple of meters, right? She went a couple of few meters, right? Because your listeners are in Europe. So I'm going to try and use kilometers and meters. So she rides off the right side of the trail. She pulls the bike back into the trail. She centers the pedals. She gets back on the bike. She apologizes. And I'm just trying to be a coach. So I'm all positive, right? Hey, it's no problem. Relax. There's no pressure. Everyone else is already gone. It's just us. Like, you're good. Don't worry about it. Another coach came up behind me, and he's part of my team. So he was going to help, right? So now she's got two coaches, and we're trying to help her. And she starts to go again, and I realize she's in a very high gear. So I thought, okay. I said, hey, why don't you downshift and make it easier to pedal, and maybe you can pick up more speed. And she was like, okay. And I'm like, with speed comes stability. With speed comes stability. And she got about 20 yards, 3-4 meters, I guess. And she runs off and she bumps into a tree. Oh my goodness, right? So she, are you okay? She comes off. Yeah, I'm fine. I wasn't going that fast. Puts the bike in the center of the trail, moves the pedals, centers the pedals exactly where she wants them. And I'm starting to think to myself, this is going to take a long time. So the lap that we were going to do is like 2.5 miles. And which I don't even know kilometers. What is that's like
about
4
kilometers.
Yeah, that's like 4 kilometers. And she has to walk around everything. She has to walk around every rock. She has to walk around the route. She has to walk around anytime there's an uphill or a downhill. She's got to get off the bike and walk the bike. But something very interesting happened, Arjan, and it was about the time I caught myself starting to lose patience. I could feel myself inside being like, who puts their kid on a bike in the woods that doesn't know how to ride a bike? Who, like in my mind, I'm thinking that. Externally, I'm not. Externally, you're doing great, baby girl. It's going to be fine. Let's just keep going, Hey, why don't you follow coach? We put coach in front of her. We said, why don't you follow the other coach? Just try and focus on his back wheel. And we asked about her glasses, and she goes, well, I'm horribly nearsighted. I really don't have any depth perception. And I thought, you're trying to ride through the woods and you can't see where you're going. And then she goes, and on top of that, I'm kind of cross-eyed. And then I realized when she turned to talk to me, her eyes are all over the place. And I thought,
oh,
I'm losing patience. But this girl who should be mortified, who should be in all of our normal senses of being, she would be embarrassed, mortified, dejected. Let's think of all those negative things. She never once said a negative thing, Arjan, the whole time. 2.5 hours of trying to go just the 4 kilometers, stopping every 20 yards, every 3-4 meters, we're stopping and resetting the pedals and getting a drink of water. And it was crazy. But she never said, not once, I'm tired. I want to quit. Can we go back to the parking lot? She never said, is there a shortcut? She never once said, is there a shortcut? Can we just go back to the parking lot? She never once in all that. And it really hit me, like right when I was getting where I was losing patience, she was through that sense of resolve, that sense of, I'm going to finish it. Like, I want to finish it, so I'm going to finish it. And and by the end, she had started to go maybe 30, 40 yards before running off the trail, which I know sounds like that's not a big thing, but it's kind of a big thing. She was going twice as far as she was when she started. And Arjan, we got her back to the parking lot when the lap was done. And there was an honest to goodness smile on this girl's face. And you could tell that there was a sense of accomplishment. Like, and as silly and as stupid as it sounds, because a lot of us that are older that can ride bikes, we're like, she rode a bike. What's the big deal? The big deal is she showed up to an event with 40 of her peers 2/3 of which she didn't know. And she went into an environment that she was unfamiliar with a challenge that most of us can't comprehend. You know, we're not vision impaired trying to do the sport. We're all able-bodied people. And so she's in there trying to do this thing, and she's staying positive, and she finished. And at the end, she had the smile and that sense of accomplishment and that resolve, that I can do anything kind of deal, no baggage, right? And I think about the kids that were in group 1, the kids that were advanced, the kids that could ride, that ride at race pace. And a couple of those teammates in that section were like, why are we taking the long route? Why didn't we take the shortcut? Why are we going so fast? You know, this is further than a race would be. Why are we going this far? And to those kids, all I could think of is, why are you being negative? Girl with unforeseeable handicaps just did a lap and is ecstatic that she's finished. And you guys are complaining because you had to do a little extra work.
Yeah.
That's something you supposedly love doing.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great example. I had to think about when first time ever, and most of us have came across the theory U example where they draw a U curve, but I always say it's like a valley. You know, it's a valley, and the only thing you need to do is get your eyes on the other side and hang on.
Yeah.
You know, the skills you develop along the way, you probably have to unlearn a lot of things, but what you need is your sight on the other end, so on the other mountain.
Yeah.
And it's not the easy way. You know, today I was preparing with my wife for some educational stuff, and it is, how do you help the kids to take ownership of their own learning and not step into the trap? I go this direction because it goes easy with me. Now, you're at the other side of your challenge is your future identity, your development, your future. You know, it's the other side of the competence development, the skill development. And what goes easy is in most cases the distraction, because fulfillment, you know, and it's in small things. My printer crashed and one of the cogs broke.
Printers never work.
No. And the first thing I thought is, you know, it's always cheaper to buy a new printer than the cartridges. So again, and then I thought, let's order the cog. So I ordered this small chain wheel in the US, had to wait 10 days. And then I fixed it. You know, didn't know what I started to do. I fixed it. That gives such a thrill. It was not the easy way out.
Yeah.
But so at the other side of a challenge is the fulfillment, is the desire, is the smile. I think that's maybe the best outcome of it all. It is the smile on the girl's face on the other side of her hard challenge. Well, the others were complaining and had an easy ride. You know, it was fast, but it was an easy ride. They were group 1.
Yeah. Yeah, they had to work for it too. But the scale of the result is completely different. And I couldn't help but think, and it's like a disease for people like us, Arjan. You know, we just can't take an experience in life and throw it in our back pocket like, oh, wasn't that fun, right? We always have to think about things. And I couldn't help but think, like, as a business consultant, as I help people in startups, or I help my enterprise clients, you know, migrate their material to more affordable or better IT frameworks. Who are the ones that have the resolve? Who are the ones that maybe bring some baggage to the transaction, but we're able to work through it? We're able to get over the challenges. I used to have a saying during the pandemic. I would say, we need to focus on finding the opportunities within the obstacles, right? And I've always kind of grown business around those ideas. Like, there's always going to be obstacles. Our job is to find the opportunities within those obstacles. And in working with this young lady, we were able to say, hey, here's the opportunity in this obstacle, right? We're gonna get you to stay on the bike, longer. We're gonna get you more confident. We're gonna get your speed up. And at the end, when you finish this lap, you're gonna smile and feel accomplished. Like that was a great result, considering the cards that we were dealt. And then I think about the other businesses that I get to work with, the people that, are there any shortcuts? Can we just use AI? Can we copy someone else's, privacy contract? Can we, because in business, we have these people that we deal with too. And it's like, hey, you're completely able-bodied. You're completely solvent. You're completely funded. There's no obstacle, no baggage for you. How far could you get if you applied yourself? How much success could you rein in if you were to optimize, your efforts? Just like we think about these guys in group 1 that complained about not taking a shortcut. You have no obstacles. You're able-bodied. You've premium equipment. If you optimize this practice time, how good would you be in competition? And I can't help but relate that to business or to personal development, right? We see people that have every advantage that God can afford them, and for some reason they don't have the resolve, they don't have the focus or the optimization to make the most of it. And then someone that has huge challenges is able to say, hey, it's just a speed bump, I can get over this, and then smile with a sense of accomplishment over the finish line.
Yeah. It's that part of character, you build it's the preparation that builds the character, that prepares you to start with something bigger, because you don't need the skills up front, you don't need the character up front, but you have the ability to develop both. And if you keep climbing on obstacles, before you know it, you're on the top of a mountain versus, the muddy field.
So, and again, I'm still processing the stuff from the weekend, and to me, it's a story that's, you read, Russell with the story brand idea and all that stuff, right? But it's like, hey, so this is a great story. This is an awesome story. And I wonder, how do you inspire people to be the person with the challenge? How do you inspire that character that you talked about to say, hey, embrace this obstacle, embrace this challenge. Don't look for the shortcut. Put the time in. You mentioned the garden, right? You sow seed, you water it, you nurture it, and then you actually have a harvest, right? And that's that celebration. It's, if we were going to get biblical about it, we could talk about the difference between the men that multiplied their talents and the guy that buried his talent so he wouldn't lose it, right? It's like, how do you take what you have and multiply it and pour energy into it? And again, that resolve is like that key word to me. It's like, gain that resolve so that you can push forward and make something so much better than what is obviously already there.
Well, could it be that the difference is, it's literally seeing? And then I mean, not with your physical eyes, but seeing with the eyes of your heart. That you have an imagined manifestation of hope, vision, future perspective. You can put many words to it, but you have seen an outcome that stirred you up, that fueled you, that there are not enough obstacles to slow you down. So seeing is believing, we say, also like biblical, seeing is believing, and faith comes by hearing, which means it's not a translation, but it's more like, there is this picture that is slowly changing into preparation, because if faith equals work, then actually the seeing is believing, verbalizing it becomes at the end action. So it becomes something at hand that that at least prepares you. It gives you the focus. That's the baseline for what you choose to do and not to do. All those things are part of, do I see it myself?
Yeah.
Because else it's floating around. I hear so many people say, let's go with the flow. And then I think, no, because
No.
because being in flow mentally actually means that you swim upstream.
Yep.
And upstream because you want to see the waterfall, you want to see the well of the river. If you flow, looks easy, it's great. Canyoning is great. That part I'm not talking about. But I talk about like flow, just like everything that falls in the river flows downstream. So before it hits the ocean, there's the swamp. And so going with the flow, now being in flow, but it's the opposite direction. And then if the river is also, of course, a great metaphor of provision, now you see what's coming your way. And based on what you have seen mentally with the eyes of your heart, now you can make choices what to let go and where to position yourself in the river to receive.
Yeah. And I guess if we were to switch gears a little bit and talk about the coach's perspective, from a coaching perspective, no matter what obstacles you see your client or your patient or your peer with, no matter what those obstacles are, you can process that, but externally, you have to feed positivity into that. Because if you allow that negativity to eke out, it amplifies whatever the challenge is. And the object is to overcome the challenge, not exacerbate the challenge. Right. And so I can remember definitely in my mind having some different thoughts, but externally it was like, hey, just, are you okay? Do you need a drink of water? How do I get to the next whatever, right? And it's that way in business. It's that way launching a startup. It's that way working with enterprise companies and CEOs. It's always about it's amazing to me because a lot of people think there's some magic to being a CEO, and the CEOs I coach are just normal people. They're just everyday average Joes, right? They just have a position, but they have the same fears, the same anxieties, the same challenges. They might not be wearing thick glasses and cross-eyed in the woods, but they might as well be for some of the results they get. And we have to be able to identify the challenges, help them, acknowledge the challenge, but not be negative about it and find a way to overcome it.
But you switched. I think you switched because you became what I love to call human-centered. You switched from a performance goal, of making the lap in a certain time, to a gain goal for this girl personally.
Just finish. I don't care about the time. Let's just get through.
It was not the performance, but it was her gain.
Yeah.
So that switch, and by that, you had to let go external expectation of the goal and facilitated her to be in a space where she could just take the challenge that she was facing. And listening to your story, everything was an obstacle, everything was a challenge, and she could take it because you took off the pressure to meet external standards.
Yeah.
And just follow that internal drive of not giving up, because her mindset, that's a growth mindset.
That to me was to see that in a young person, right? In a situation where most people, like I said earlier, would be horrified, humiliated, scared, embarrassed. Just think of all those things, right? Like you're in a performance arena where you're not performing. You're just not. It's like the kid in Little League that could never hit a pitched baseball. You strike out every time you get up to bat. I mean, it's that type of dread that we would assume. But this young lady apparently had nothing negative to articulate, and that to me was the standout point. That was, as the further we got, the more supportive I got for her, even though I was losing my patience. Internally, I could feel myself getting more and more supportive. Like I'm really pulling for this girl just to finish this stupid lap so that she can accomplish it. And then to see that she never once said, and I never, I want to quit. I want a shortcut. And I think about all of the people that don't have challenges that are looking for a shortcut for something.
Yeah.
And it's like, there are no shortcuts. We got to put in the work.
I love that phrase. There are no shortcuts. There is acceleration, but there are no shortcuts. So there are no silver bullets. There can be simple processes, but the work will never be easy because it's obstacles, challenges, competence development, unlearning, shifting paradigms, all short words, but journeys in themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a inspirational moment, and the timing was just right. I knew I was going to do this show with you, and then that happened, and I was just like, that it was just a surreal moment, where you got to really see somebody shine.
So I'm just thinking to wrap it up. I'm thinking like, what is the bigger leadership lesson coming out of this story? Do you have a thought?
I got a few.
Your patience, I know, but
Yeah. But the other thing is, when you sign up to lead somebody, and I always start, like with my clients, I always do this. I do a needs assessment. I take a snapshot. I know what I'm getting into before I get into it. Right. In this particular instance, I didn't have that chance. I showed up, there was 40 kids. They split them into groups. They split up the coaches and they said, here's your group. Right. And I never did a needs assessment and I never made an assumption that there was somebody in the group that couldn't physically ride the bicycle, so it was a huge, like, from a leadership perspective, it was just like this huge, like, oh wow, what a performance gap I've exhibited here for myself. Like normally I would have taken a moment and said, okay, who's in the group, who has experience, who's going to be at the front of the group, who's going to be in the middle of the group, who's going to be at the end of the group, and we would have set up some parameters. But in this case, we all just set out to go, and it was through execution that we had exhibited this gap in understanding. And that's not typically, from a leadership perspective, how things should go. From a leadership perspective, you should understand your gaps before you begin to execute. And so preparedness, a proper needs assessment, understanding the playing field and the scope of work, those were all things that really popped out in the story for me. Yeah. And then the wrap up was how important, because we talk about mindset all the time in leadership circles. I mean, how many things do you see come up every week on LinkedIn? Someone's going to do a talk on mindset, and we talk about how important it is. But when you see it in a physical example, execute in this manner, that's when it really drives home. You're like, that sense of resolve, that sense of determination, that personal desire to finish something. If somebody really has that, nothing's going to stop them.
Yeah. Well, that was my takeaway, like in a few words, like that the story illustrates the performance gap at one end and the personal gain at the other end.
Yeah.
And as a leader, navigating that, if you would manage it, you would focus probably on the performance gap, and then it would be like the process, the system, those things will all be leading. But now you had the human element, and the personal growth, the personal challenge, and the personal gain, because that's the lasting one. That the
Yeah.
process, the system, that will go another cycle. But the growth this person has made prepares her for a bigger game. And I think that's from a leadership perspective, it cannot be just about productivity. It
No.
is about meaningful, purposeful the person as well. If that is missed, then the person is consumed. If there is a mismatch, then the person deserves a better place. And this story illustrated that.
You bring me back to a period in my past when I was younger. I was very hungry for success, not just personally, but for others. And I trained in that work harder, work faster, hustle and grind kind of mentality because I was younger, and that was my understanding of my understanding of leadership when I was younger was more of a management perspective than a leader perspective.
Yeah.
And I taught some power sports dealerships how to sell more parts and labor and become successful financially. And one of the dealers that I had trained gave me some feedback about a year and a half, 2 years after I had trained them. And he said, we made more money than we ever saw. My dad was really thankful. I took over the business, and we were making money hand over fist. And that's, as a coach, I was like, oh yeah, we did it. And then he said, but the methodologies that we used and some of the cues we took from you really alienated our staff, and we lost all of our best people, and we've turned over all of our staff. And he goes, and I don't think I'll ever do that again. I'd rather make less money and have a happier place to work than to have the success.
Yeah.
And now, as I've grown and I've seasoned myself, I enjoy the moments like the smile in the parking lot when she finished the ride more than seeing somebody count the money in their bank account.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And maybe that is the biggest takeaway, that what is not your output, but what's this smile as an outcome that you leave with your client,
Yeah.
But so who am I becoming? Well, what if that's defined as a person who walks around with a smile because he's helping people to get the smile on their face?
Yeah.
Then that's well-being, but not just in a relational context. But that is sometimes such a paradox with the routines, the protocols, the processes. But that's something that I think that's where leadership is currently being reinvented as not another dimension of management, but totally as a different league.
Yeah. Yeah. This, obviously I still pursue, growth, and we look at KPIs and we look at the columns and the dollars at the bottom, right? Obviously we do that as part of business. But let's face facts. If we were just after the money and the profits, we could leverage AI for different process adjustments.
Yeah.
We have to put the human touch back into things, and we have to give people the opportunity to excel and rest and excel and rest. And if we don't focus on the human element, we may spike a profit but lose in the long run. And no matter how much AI we inject into our businesses or our environments, we're still humans, and we still have to have that experience. And so this whole experience over the weekend with this whole mountain biking thing and how it applies to business it's still unraveling in my head.
Yeah.
But it's really helped me to understand, that what we've been doing at Mañana No Mas and the things that we do with our business consulting is right on the money. Like, we are helping people find progress. We're helping them find gains. We're helping them find profits and margins. But we're also really focused on the leadership aspects of it, like, training up your replacements and having a warm bench and building leaders within leader groups and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's super important. Like in our field, Arjan, I don't think we have much to worry about with AI because they still haven't figured out the human element to inject into those systems yet.
It's another power tool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. And for all our listeners, I always close. There must be something that triggered you, resonated with you. Don't waste that moment. Reach out to Kurt or to me. Use the link below in the screen or in the comments of the podcast, businessrevivalist.com/connect. And do yourself a favor. Turn that trigger, that resonance into taking a step forward and take the challenge, climb up the obstacle, overcome it, and have a personal gain. So, Kurt, thank you very much.
No problem. It's good. Great to be back.
Yes, well, we'll see each other soon again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.